Hey guys, this is my first video. It may be my only video. I just thought it would be cool to do something like this, and trying to think of something to talk about. I'm not the most interesting person, but I figured it would be a cool idea to talk about some of my favorite books that I own that have to do with the space program. And trying to narrow down what books I have would be good to talk about kind of got a little out of hand, so there's quite a few of them here. I don't know if I'll talk about all the ones that I have sitting around me right now, but yeah. So the first book I'm going to talk about is A Man on the Moon. This is the first book that I really read that had to do with the space program. It mostly centers around the Apollo program. It talks about all the different astronauts, and you really get a sense of all of the different people and their personalities and who they were, which is sort of what really fascinates me the most about it. And they sort of use this book as the basis for the mini-series From the Earth to the Moon, if you've ever watched that. It's really good. It's my favorite, and it's definitely probably the number one thing I would recommend if you don't know anything about the space program or the moon missions or anything. This is definitely the first book you want to tackle, because it'll tell you pretty much everything you ever wanted to know. And then the next book is another classic one that everybody's read. It's The Right Stuff. You may have seen the movie. It's about the original 7 Mercury astronauts in the Mercury program, and it's got a lot of stuff in it that isn't necessarily true. And some stuff in the movie also wasn't necessarily true. And there's definitely things in it that the guys themselves did not like, but it's probably the most popular and most comprehensive history you'll come across, and it's also really interesting and a really fun book, and really easy to get into and understand. A next book coming after that is, my copy's kind of ragged, but it's called We 7. It's another book about the original 7 astronauts. It's touted as being written by the astronauts themselves. Probably better off to say ghost written. It's put together by the people who did Life magazine. Life magazine articles that were written by the astronauts about themselves and their lives, and it's sort of just a compilation of those things. It's really weird. It's a really bizarre read. My copy is old and haggard and came from Amazon.com, but there is a new print of it. You can actually find this in like a Barnes & Noble or something now. It's not hard to find. They put it back in print, so. But it's definitely interesting, but it's also very, very strange to read, considering it was published in the heyday of these guys, and sort of in the 1960s, when they were still had the image of being very wholesome and very all-American guys, and before all of the other things that this book talked about. So I'll put that one down now. It's another good one that I have near me. John Glenn, who was one of the original 7 Mercury astronauts. And if you don't know who he is, he's the first person to, first American to orbit the Earth. He did 3 orbits. He was the 3rd American in space, and the first Marine in the astronaut corps. He is the most adorable human being ever alive. He is super wholesome and super cute, and that's all completely, totally true. It's not made up. It wasn't fictionalized. He really was that guy, which is awesome. And I don't know, I just really like John Glenn. He's a cool dude. Next one is we'll talk about this one. Another one of the Mercury astronauts, one of the very, very interesting Mercury astronauts, was Deke Slayton. He was supposed to fly the mission immediately after John Glenn's, but was grounded because of a heart condition. Instead of flying in space, they put him in charge of the astronaut office and later put him in charge of choosing the actual space crews. So if you go back and you look at the histories of who actually flew in space during the Gemini and Apollo missions, Deke Slayton is the guy who was responsible for choosing those flight crews and choosing which guys did what, and basically he's responsible for who walked on the moon and who did not, which is a pretty cool thing. And nobody knew what his little systems were for choosing flight crews or anything until this book came out, and that includes the astronaut themselves. They had no idea why they got paired up with who they got paired up with until they read this book, years and years later. But he's a super, super interesting guy, a super cool guy, and he's a really cool guy to learn about. This one, Light This Candle. It's a autobiography, or not autobiography, sorry, just a biography on Alan B. Shepard, who's the first American to ever fly in outer space. He flew the first Mercury mission. It was a 15-minute mission, suborbital. He is probably one of the most badass dudes you'll ever come across. And you can read all about the ways he basically, he flew the Mercury mission, and then he was also grounded for an inner ear disorder he had. And it talks about just how they gave him a job as being in charge of the astronaut office, so he was basically boss astronaut, and he had a very bad attitude about it and terrorized all of the astronauts. And then when he fixed his ear, he shouldered his way into a moon mission that he really didn't belong on and went to the moon. And he's a really, really, he's one of my favorite people. He's one of my favorite people to read about, and he's really, really cool. And Deke Slayton and Alan Shepard actually wrote a book together too, quite a while back. So, and that's a really, really interesting kind of weird read. Yeah. Okay, so the next one I've got sitting here is Lost Moon, which you might know a little bit better by this title. They based the movie of Apollo 13 on this book by Jim Lovell. Jim Lovell was played by Tom Hanks in the movie. I got this copy from a Goodwill, and I actually didn't mean to buy it, but then I came across this on the inside cover. Don't know how well you can see that. I don't know if it's genuine. I really don't, obviously, if I bought it in a Goodwill, but I like to believe that it is. That Jim Lovell actually signed this copy. So, but Jim Lovell is also a super, super adorable guy. He's super cool. He's one of the more badass people you ever hear about. And a lot of people don't think that things that went on in the movie of Apollo 13 were true. They most definitely were. The movie actually left out a lot of stuff that probably all seems really implausible. But the only stuff that was probably changed was some of the dialogue. But besides that, all of it was true, and it's all really cool, and it's all in this book, as well as just his life. This is a biography, it's not just the mission, so, but it's definitely cool, so, if you find it. Another great book, also by an Apollo astronaut, was written by Michael Collins. He was the command module pilot on Apollo 11, so you probably know Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Well, he was the other guy on that mission. He did not land on the moon, obviously. He is one of the funniest guys ever. He is really, really snarky, and he has a really, really great sense of humor, and he has a really, really good gift for writing. And all of the astronauts actually say that he's probably the best writer of the whole group. The book is crazy interesting and it's really, really funny. And he just snarks on all of the guys from the astronaut groups and just all the guys, and it's really great, especially if you know about those guys. It gives you a lot of insight into who they were and what their relationships were, in a really easily accessible and really funny way. So that's a good one to get into. One of my favorite people besides Alan Shepard is Gene Cernan, the last man on the moon. As you can see here, you can probably guess he commanded the last Apollo moon mission. He also flew on Apollo 10 and Gemini 9 before that. He swears a lot. He's really funny. I don't think he means to be all the time. But he, this is another one where he just talks about the guys, and you can definitely get a sense of his relationship with individual people, and he doesn't really care, and will talk about whatever he feels like talking about, and say whatever he feels like saying about these guys. And from what I understood, this book actually rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and he didn't make a whole lot of friends when he wrote this book, but it's really great, and it has a really good account of his spacewalk on Gemini 9, which was insanely terrifying. So if you can read that, that's a really great one to read. Another good one that's a little bit different is The Universe in a Mirror. It's a comprehensive history of the Hubble Space Telescope. It's really easy to understand, really easy to access. It talks about the whole history of the telescope from when they conceived it to kind of fighting to get it made, and the whole headache of when it was launched, and the problem with the lenses, which was very embarrassing for everybody involved. But it's a really good thing to read, especially now, with the James Webb telescope and all the shenanigans going on with that. It helps you to kind of understand what had to happen to make Hubble happen, and what has to happen to make the James Webb telescope happen. If you don't know, the James Webb telescope is the telescope that they're trying to develop to take Hubble's place when Hubble inevitably dies, which it will, because there's no space shuttle anymore, so they can't service it anymore. So that's and it's really good. Another one I have near me is If You Want to Have a Good Cry. This is a book by Evelyn Husband about her husband, Rick Husband, who was the commander of the last Columbia mission, when Columbia broke apart, while re-entering the atmosphere, and it's really good for having a good cry over. It talks about just his life, and it also talks about really extensively his crew on the mission, and everything they did leading up to that mission, and you get a real sense of how close they were, and how closely they worked together, and how well formed of a crew they were, which doesn't always happen. So it's a really good one. But yeah, it'll definitely you'll definitely need tissues when you go through that one. Another good one that I have on hand here is, this one's more of a picture book. It's Alan Bean. He was, you'll know him, he's the fourth man to walk on the moon. He was the lunar module pilot on Apollo 12. He actually left NASA to become a painter, and this is a book of a lot of his paintings. Some in here. But it's really cool, and it tells you all the stories that go with his paintings. He based a lot of his paintings on real things. This is a painting of Alan Shepard on Apollo 14, hitting the golf ball. But he has this really cool distinction of being like the only artist to have actually gone to the moon, and he paints having been on the moon, and he paints from experience, and he actually uses things from the mission. He has like a boot and things like that he uses in his paintings. So it's really cool, and it's really some of the most interesting stuff if you're into art. A guy who's been to basically another planet painting it. There's nobody else who does that. So he's actually got a couple of books, but this is the one that I've seen floating around in stores. A couple of other ones here. Gene Kranz, Failure is Not an Option. Again, if you've seen the movie Apollo 13, you'll know who this guy is. Failure is Not an Option is actually something that was said in the movie. He never actually said in real life, but his character in the movie said it, so he adopted it and called his autobiography that. So yeah, whatever he wants to do, that's cool. Chris Kraft was another. He was the mission controller, the guy who was in charge and basically terrorized everybody all the time, and does a lot of bad mouthing of everybody in this book, and it's simultaneously amazing and horrifying, but it's really, really great. I've also got First Man about Neil Armstrong, who recently passed away, and I'm not really cool talking about yet. What else did I grab? There's another one, Moonwalker by Charlie Duke. Charlie Duke is another not so well known guy. Walked on the moon on Apollo 16, so hence the name of the book. But it's also really, really great. So yeah. Oh, there's another one. This was Pete Conrad. Pete Conrad is actually my very, very, very favorite astronaut, and I should have talked about this book earlier, but he commanded Apollo 12 and also commanded the first Skylab mission. And he was a crazy interesting guy. He was a really, really different guy. Probably the comic relief astronaut, the funny guy, but he was also one of the most capable. And any of them will tell you that he was probably the best of all of them. So, but this book, I guess, was written. It was written by his wife shortly after he passed away. So there's that one. Now you should definitely read, because he's my very favorite guy. So yeah, I think that's about it for now. Hopefully I did this right. Hopefully it's okay. And hopefully it didn't suck. So, yeah. Thank you for watching if you sat through all of that.